The reason, therefore, that Israel is the biggest recipient of American aid and military support is because this hand, called the House of Rothschild, takes the money from the United States and hands it to this hand, called Israel of the House of Rothschild, and says thank you very much. The reason that there's no questioning of Israeli nuclear capability, that they get away literally with mass murder time and time again, is because the House of Rothschild also controls the countries of the European Union and controls the European Union. I mean, Tony Blair is a yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, how high would you like me to jump sir, frontman for the House of Rothschild. So who do they put in after he left the British government as negotiator of peace in Israel? Tony Buddy Blair. What should I say, Mr. Rothschild? Thank you very much. Thank you. That's so cute. Thank you. And that's it. So when you've got the same force controlling all these different agencies, then of course they're going to be coordinated. That's why Israel gets away with what it gets away with. And if people think that's anti-Semitic, well actually anti-Semitic means anti-Arab, by the way, then they'll have to take it and shove it somewhere where the sun don't shine. Because I ain't shutting up about this, because it's fundamental to understanding the world and to understanding the European Union and world events. The Jewish people in general have been mercilessly used by the House of Rothschild and their front secret society, satanic secret society called Zionism, as a front which they can hide behind. So it is House of Rothschild organizations like B'nai B'rith, Sons of the Covenant, who created an organization called the Anti-Defamation League, which goes around defaming everyone, ironically, who have not just they're not there to protect Jewish people or minorities. They're there simply to stop legitimate investigation of the Rothschilds and its network. That's what they're there for. And they are in so many ways the Rothschilds. At operational level, the center of the spider's web. And they need to be exposed, because if they get exposed and they go, when I say go, they are removed from their positions of power. Because, to be honest, if they went to jail for what they have been responsible for, the House of Rothschild, they would have to reincarnate hundreds of times to complete the sentence. And we've ignored them, or we've not ignored them, people have ignored their power for long enough because they've brilliantly hidden it. It needs the light shone on it, because when they come down, in so many ways, the House of Cards comes down. Thank you very much.
Dark here in England, and I'm joined by the one and only David Icke. Now, David, you have been making many predictions about World War III, and a lot of things you've been saying throughout the years have slowly been coming together. Right now, with the situation in ISIS, how do you break it down? What's your understanding of it?
Well, world wars change worlds, and if you have a global agenda, then global problems allow you to offer global solutions. And if you look how the world was transformed by the First World War and the Second World War, the world was a completely different place after both of those wars. And the idea all along has been to have a third world war to complete the transformation into a global state with a world government and a world army dictating to the global population. And there was a letter, a controversial letter, because people dismiss it, but with the passage of events, it becomes more and more credible. And it was a letter written by a man called Albert Pike, who was a massive, massive Freemason in the United States in the 19th century. And it was to another Illuminati infamous character called Mazzini, Giuseppe Mazzini. And it detailed 3 world wars that would transform global society. And the first one described it in the terms that happened. The second one it described in terms that it happened. But, you know, you can say, well, it came to light later, so, you know, maybe they just put that in and faked the accuracy of the first 2 wars. So the credibility of what it said lies in what it said about the Third World War. And it talked about creating a conflict between the Muslim world and what it called political Zionism. And people will say, well, that's got to be a fake, because there was no Zionism when that letter was supposed to be written. Well, this is an agenda that's projected a long way forward. This is why Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, and Eric Blair, George Orwell, 1984, who knew each other. Huxley taught George Orwell French at Eton College, where the royals go, and they knew each other and they became friends. And from the same sources, not least the Fabian Society in Britain, they understood the projected agenda. And we're talking there in 1932 that Huxley's book was published, 1948 that Orwell's book was published, and they are describing the society that's unfolding today at that time. And there are many, many other examples of people predicting the future who were insiders who have turned out to be incredibly accurate. So the idea that
we have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations.
Albert Pike would know that this Zionist movement was coming and the establishment of Israel was coming, is very credible when you look at the background evidence. And of course, Zionism was established not that long after this letter was supposed to be written. And so he was talking about the Muslim world being brought into a war with the political Zionism, what today we call Israel, and that this would, in my terms, create a vortex that would draw in the world, in our terms, America, the European Union, NATO, into this war. And what you have now is a situation that this ISIS group has come out of nowhere, in effect, incredibly well armed, incredibly funded. I mean, I've seen figures like $2 billion at its disposal. And it's walking into towns in Iraq and taking them over. It's established itself at the key border crossings into Syria and into Jordan. And it's all happened really fast. And what the potential of this clearly is to do what Pike was talking about. Because I've said in my books for years that the plan was to create a massive divide and rule conflict between the Shia Muslims and the Sunni Muslims. I mean, I know it's hard to believe for anyone frickin' sane, but this argument over, this ancient argument over who should, be the natural successor to, the rightful successor to Muhammad and all that stuff, has created this enormous schism. And schisms are there to be manipulated and exploited by these people. So what you have, therefore, is this ISIS that suddenly appeared with its grotesque violence that is representing Sunni Muslims. Then there's another aspect of this, which is a real red flag for me, and that is this ISIS organization is very extreme, and its very name, when you break down the wording, is describing its ambitions, and that's to take over Iraq, to take over Syria, and to take over what they call the Levant. And what does the Levant include? Israel. So here you have this extreme Muslim group, or actually army, actually saying in its own name that our intention is to take over the Levant, to take over Israel. And you'd think at any other time, even with a lesser situation, Netanyahu would be surrounded by microphones and he'd be saying, we must be protected, Israel is in danger. Instead, he's come out and said, oh, no problem, you leave them to it. America, no, don't intervene, leave them to it, let them basically weaken each other. And then you've got the United States, their reaction. I mean, it sums up the ludicrous nature of it, that John Kerry has gone to Iraq and he said, well, we don't know about bloody airstrikes because, we might kill civilians. Well, that's never stopped you in the past, mate, has it? Or any of your predecessors. And what it seems to me as I'm reading this is that they're all standing off to let this ISIS get a big foothold in that region. And then if it moves to the point where it starts to threaten Israel, then the button will be pressed. Then the Americans and NATO will come in because they're committed to protecting Israel's security. And then you'll start to see why because what Pike was talking about was drawing all these different disparate groups in and creating this vortex of mutual self-destruction, which would change the war that would change the world, taking on from the previous world wars that changed the world, and then at that point their global fascist society would be brought in. No doubt justified by we need a world government and we need a world army to stop this ever happening again, even though we were saying that actually created it. And then you've got what I've been saying now way back in the 1990s. The idea is for this Third World War to involve Russia and China against the West.
Oceania versus Eurasia, yeah.
Yeah, in the 1984 kind of scenario. And what you have now is the demonization of Russia. Have you noticed that? How suddenly we got the demonization of Russia? And what's opening up in the Ukraine, while all this is starting to go on in the Middle East, is another front against Russia. Because, you know, it's very easy to see how Russia can be pulled into this Middle Eastern conflict by supporting Syria, because destroying Syria is part of ISIS's agenda and American agenda and NATO's agenda.
And also Iran as well.
Yeah, and destroying Iran, yeah. So, and Russia would come out in support of Iran, and the same would happen with China. And so you can see how the pieces in the game are being moved around to create the scenario that Pike talked about. And the idea is to basically bring everything to its knees, so that the world would have to be rebuilt in its structure and the way it operates, and that would be in the image of what they've been working towards all along: world government, world central bank, world army, world currency, centralized control of the planet. It's very easy to see with current events how it's moving in that direction. And we need to understand what the goals are, to understand what the moves towards that goal are, and their order, their new world order.
Problem reacts to solution, order out of chaos. You know, they set up the problem, U.S. funds with NATO, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, ISIS in Syria to go after Assad. You know, they stop, Russia stops the U.S. from attacking them, so they find a different way. Now ISIS is running loose. Israel, for the first time ever, is saying it's not even a problem. Yeah. Meanwhile, they backed everything from the very beginning, and they're creating this awful situation. They're bringing Iran into it, meanwhile financing both sides of the situation. Iran is now fighting in Iraq, and, you know, China and Russia are standing by. They're being agitated in Ukraine with the bombing in Donetsk and in Slavansk right now. Ukraine is pretty much asking for Russians to come over with all the bombs that they're dropping on them.
And then all this stuff going on in the Middle East, you are diluting Russia's impact on what's happening in the Middle East. Yeah. And it's all a setup. And when you have Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who are 51st states of the United States, there are many of those, mind, funding this ISIS and funding this terrorism, while the Americans, who could tell them to stop any time, are saying, are condemning the very terrorism that their 51st states are supporting. Well, the picture's so bloody obvious. It's a setup, and it's a setup to attempt to trigger World War III.
And that's why you see Russia trying to back their economy with gold. That's why they're making better business relations with China. They're selling oil to each other right now, and they're moving away from all this. Yeah. But you know, Putin's ego is very strong. They can provoke him, and you don't know how Putin will respond. That's what they were discussing at the Bilderberg meeting just a few weeks ago, when it came out that they were discussing if they should raise the NATO defense budget. What should they do in Ukraine, and how can we understand Putin? How can we use the situation with Putin? It came out in the Bilderberg meetings that they're discussing this. So you can only imagine what NATO, arms dealers, oil oligarchs of the Western power elite are going to have an interest when it comes to important decisions like this. Is there anything else that we need to understand about this kind of creation of war that's happening right in front of our eyes?
A big problem for them. And when they wanted to, because they were behind the time, they wanted to push that on. That's when they did the chemical weapons scam, which was not Assad's work at all. That would have been suicide. He's not that stupid.
It worked in Iraq once, and then Russia came in, stepped in, blocked it off, and also popular support stopped the war in Syria.
Yeah, and your popular rejection of bombing another country stopped that being pushed on. So they're behind time on Syria. But that moves then into ISIS. By arming ISIS, the Americans allow them to also supply the terrorists in Syria, which they also control. It's all unfolding with the magician behind, or the puppet master behind the scenes. And when we realize that, we can see that events are not random, but coldly calculated. These people are sheer, undiluted evil. And people need to understand that. Otherwise, they will reject that anyone could do what they're doing and kill and maim and slaughter so many people. They can do it because they have no heart, they have no empathy, they have no emotional compassion, and thus mayhem is their currency, and they have no emotional consequence. They are not like us, so don't judge what they'll do by what you would do, because it ain't the same thing.
To understand the future, we have to understand the past. David, thank you so much.
Brothers and sisters, we stand before you with a revolutionary mind. If you grasp that concept, then you understand that revolution begins by accepting change within yourself. and having an open heart towards the opinions of others. Revolution is a responsibility we all share where the truth prevails. Revolution is our shared consciousness, thus acknowledging that change is inevitable in order to avoid destruction of the earth. We the people have the power. Anonymous is a tool of the people, a tool that we are here to provide. For the people and by the people. We are not an organization, we are an entity, a brotherhood. An idea. For as individuals and revolutionaries alike can be destroyed, you will never destroy an idea. The truth prevails, always. Anonymous is here to supervise the actions of the corrupt people and institutions of this world, thus enunciating their actions and divulging the truth. We are aware of the occupiers of the world. We are with you. You are the vanguard of this revolution, and none of this would be possible if not for those in the front lines throughout the world. We are anonymous. We are legion.
You get up and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
This is like economic style to do with the UK, and what I'll talk on this one as brief as possible. You know, like a logical side to a lot of things behind that, and a lot of weird things. Basically, when it comes to things to do with that, you know, what I was going across on is on my mind. Basically, to do with economics, there's a lot of things that I'd question. You know, first of all, you know, when David Cameron, etc., is, you know, talking about immigration being a problem. As I said years ago, Blair was saying this as well. And, you know, in before, you know, right-wing assumptions, I'm just talking in general. You know, basically what it was, you know, free corporate-owned media, they were saying immigration's a problem, etc. And, you know, at the same time, since Blair to David Cameron, basically, you know, immigration's still allowed. What I would ask is, what I'll go on to is, surely, you know, if you were saying immigration was a problem, you know, you would have dealt with that, you know, ages ago. But what I was going across on what I said before is, I believe that it would probably be a part of the economic boost, or, you know, for economic profits, you know, on that side. Otherwise, you know, if it's not making money for the economy, which she mentioned a lot in the news, then surely I'd assume that it's part of what's going on to do boost the economic system, is the way I'd see it anyway. And, you know, it's just unfair to blame immigration, in my opinion, you know, as the problem to the UK. And then, you know, for yourself and the corporate-owned media, and at the same time, you know, you're allowing immigration, which means you basically, in my opinion, would be making money off that for economic purposes, and then telling everybody it's immigrants' faults and stuff. You know, there's a lot more behind that. And, you know, it's not fair to blame people for something if you're actually allowing it. In my opinion, anyway. And then things like, you know, like crime and stuff as well. You know what Akala was saying on one of his Fire in the Booth tracks, which is true. You know, the prison system, the same as America. You know, that again, you know, everybody's always going on about, you know, they have to pay for every prisoner, and you know, when someone's in prison, I always hear people going, "Oh, it's more tax off my money," you know, for another prisoner. And what Akala was going across on was, you know, tied with the immigration. To me, I would see that a lot of people are actually, you know, thrown in prison over the littlest things. Again, for economic boost, because every bit of tax from every person in the country basically goes through that economic system itself. And again, you know, people are pointing fingers at a lot of prisoners who are probably being imprisoned when they didn't have to be, which isn't fair again. You know, that would be prisoners, immigrants being blamed. You know, public thinking that's the thing, and most likely it's to do with, you know, basically boosting economics. And, you know, it's, in my opinion, it's not a fair way to do it. And if you were going to, then you just have to be more honest. The same as, you know, there's a lot of things, what I believe, tied to, you know, like economic profits and stuff. to do with the country, what a lot of people aren't being told. And, you know, in my opinion, again, people should be just told what the facts are. You know, there was more things going into that. You know, there was other things, but my mind's just all over the place. It's like, you know, what we're seeing now, the charges for, you know, like plastic bags, supermarkets, that'll boost the economy. All of these things, you know, congestion charges, parking tickets, all of them, you know, all of those things, they boost the economy. What I was saying, which ties with America as well, you know, like speeding tickets and stuff, you know, you hear a lot of people say about what they say is police wasting time, you know, giving people speeding tickets, etc. You know, what's tied with America, what they were doing is, you know, deliberately stinging people to do that. And, you know, again, you know, when people are given speeding tickets or whatever, you know, they're given fines from the police, you know, those things go through tax again, and boost economy, congestion charges, London and stuff like that. You know, a lot of people aren't told of these things, all these things tied together. And a lot of people, you know, are misled from what they're told. You know, they're told certain people are to blame. And they're not told that it's basically being done deliberately to boost economy. And those people you're taxing who are pissed off with the people you're saying are the problem, in my opinion, would be you actually doing it to them. You know, I don't really know the full ins to, you know, like economic struggle, you know, with a country, or this country, England. You know, I'm sure that a country has to run fairly on economics, but there's a point where, you know, I'm sure there'd be better solutions than, you know, basically using deception, in my opinion. There was a lot of things, like I said, basically in the eyes of, you know, like well, you know, put aside the bankers, but, you know, like the country, you know, if you wanted to boost economic profits, you would have to basically make money off every single thing. And say England was struggling around the time, I think it was Bulgaria, Kosovo, that era, years ago. Say Britain was starting to struggle. I believe immigration behind closed doors would have been you know, like a plan to basically boost the economics anyway. And, you know, all those years it was being portrayed that immigrants, you know, the problem, you know, blame them, say they're the problem. And, you know, I believe with good reason, you know, it was already, you know, planned to basically boost economics. Like I said, there's so many things behind that. And, you know, like I said, I don't know what goes behind economics. All I know is it's not a fair way to run a country and blame people. Yeah, well, but referring, like I said, speeding tickets and stuff, you know, they're near enough like stings for people, you know, basically to make more tax for economic purposes. Referring back to America, what I remember on there, they were basically deliberately, you know, like setting up American citizens in a certain town, police force. It was something like jaywalking or something, but they were deliberately, you know, doing it to get money. And like I said, it's no different really, in my opinion, to, you know, like speeding tickets or whatever, parking tickets and that. You know, economic profits, you know, there's a point. Basically what I'm putting across is people need to be aware of that. I mean, I believe in, you know, like, when it comes to, you know, like prison and stuff, you know, every prisoner that makes money, this is where it comes across that I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people who have been in prison, you know, they've been in prison just to basically be a money maker for the economic system for the UK. So a lot of people are wrongfully imprisoned. You know, I don't know if illegally, but all I would put across is, you know, sentenced not so fairly on those terms. And, you know, in my opinion, again, that's unfair to do to people. And then, you know, say it's, you know, somebody else's problem. You know, I just like to point these things out, because as I said, I don't know what's going on with Scotland and, you know, their referendum. But this is what I was saying before. You know, when I saw Scotland were about to go independent, I do remember David Cameron, you know, basically pleading to Scotland, you know, to stay part of the UK. And I believe, you know, tying to where David Cameron does mention, you know, economics a lot. I believe that, you know, Scotland go independent, it'd be a big damage to England, rest of the UK's economy. As I said, my mind's fucked anyway. As I said, it's fried. But, you know, Scotland go independent, you know, you'd be struggling more. You know, the size of Scotland itself, the industry and stuff. So, you know, all I know is there's a lot of things that aren't being told, amongst other things, to the public about the truth. And, you know, it's always fairer to be honest. Because, you know, I don't see said my mind's absolutely fried. But, you know, I just want to point out, basically, you know, the country's running, in my opinion, on a lot of unfair profits through economy, which are near enough illegal, or, you know, not being so directly, as I said, my mind's fried. Basically, you know, being put forward as direct as they should be. And, you know, if people know more into that. I mean, what I remember seeing earlier was something about, which did look illogical, to do with, you know, one part, David Cameron, you're saying something like, you know, helping people in poverty, and at the same time you basically are pushing them into it. Basically that's what it was. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. You know, you can either do one or the other, and this is another thing what was based on, you know, like the crime, which I was going to tie to, you know, prisons and stuff, you know, in poor areas, council estates across the UK. You know, on this term, you know, where it comes to crime, the ties with crime prevention, another thing that David Cameron's mentioned a lot of PMs for years is, you know, the problem with crime, you know, antisocial behaviour and stuff like that. Same time, tied to the, you know, prison profits. To me, I wouldn't be surprised if it's deliberately being done. You know, if you saw that, you know, the more prisoners you get would make a economic boost from the taxes, surely, you know, you would allow those people, you know, in those poor areas to deliberately, you know, get themselves in trouble. And, you know, therefore more prisoners, more profit. But at the same time, it's illogical because, you know, you're basically saying that crime's a problem in those areas. And, you know, to me, it would mean that you were allowing it to happen for, you know, economic purposes. You know, again, that's logical and, you know, dishonest in my opinion. You know, this is theoretically wise, but like I said, it makes sense to me. So, you know, sometimes I look at this, it's not just the UK though, but like America and that. And, you know, there's a lot of bad stuff going on. And people not being told the full insight to, you know, what they're told in the news. But, you know, at least I'll make people aware that, you know, it's not fair for a lot of reasons. You know, people deliberately being shut on and stuff. Like I said, when it comes to the bankers, you know, like basically run the economic system, to me it would say that they're basically making the profits through that tax system. And, you know, basically they're the ones that are basically making money off everyone in general of the UK, let alone US. And, you know, it's all tied to, you know, basically making people, you know, in general, you know, struggle for money, you know, from poverty to, you know, the top working class or whatever. You know, those bankers, like you said, who I know are in charge, really, of both nations. You know, they're basically making profit out of everyone. And, you know, then at the same time, people who aren't the problem for these tax problems are being blamed for the corporate-owned media. You know, immigrants are taking your money and stuff like that, or prisoners, you know, they're boosting prisoners and stuff in the system. You know, to me, you know, if I was a banker and I was wanting to make profit in business terms, and I own those corporate-owned medias, in my mind it would be to do that. You know, it would be like milk people of the nation from poverty to the, you know, working class, whatever, then blame it on immigration, which we'd be allowing in anyway, and, you know, blame it on poverty-stricken areas, prisoners, crime boosts, which they'd be allowing as well, you know, to make that profit. Blame it on everything, you know, make up the congestion charges. And, you know, that would be the eye of a banker, you know, who wanted to make money, who ran a nation, in my opinion. You know, and like I said, the people who know more than I do know themselves that it's not the actual Houses of Parliament or, you know, White House really running both nations. You know, like I said, referring to the Federal Reserve, which a lot of people don't realise is, you know, that's a private, it's not even a government-owned, basically, it's a blue page directory bank, you know, in the American phone book. You know, at the same time, people are told, you know, it belongs to the US government. It's called Federal Reserve as well, Federal US government. You know, you look that up and you'll find out that it doesn't even belong to, you know, like the American government itself. And this ties back to JF Kennedy and, you know, Abraham Lincoln and their connections to the Federal Reserve, and as to why they suddenly were both assassinated, you know, in connection to that. You know, Bank of England, I think, is the one out of the UK, and I don't know if I'd assume that's private listed as well, but that's basically like the Federal Reserve or a central bank. You know, people don't even realise these things, and when people realise they do, and they're basically realising their private America Federal Reserve would tell everyone everything, they'll realise, you know, that it's those people who are running those countries, and you know, they're basically telling everyone below them what to do, which refers to Woodrow Wilson, what he said, that basically he's not running America, and neither is any other president. You know, it doesn't point to anyone else other than, you know, the bankers themselves to say, you know, Woodrow Wilson, I'm not in charge, neither is any other president. Then we've got Abraham Lincoln and JF Kennedy, you know, both assassinated over, you know, over the Federal Reserve, you know, Federal Reserve owned by bankers. You know, if I was looking into a criminal investigation and I basically, you know, saw the deaths of Abraham Lincoln and JF Kennedy, you know, motive-wise to how they were suddenly killed, it was to do with the Federal Reserve. You know, who would the suspect be? Your suspect. You know, it points out who they were, and you know, same as Alexander Tsar of Russia. You know, again, killed around the same time as Abraham Lincoln. You know, over a bank as well, what was planned to be put there. You know, it points out a lot about who really is running the world, and you know, the people behind a lot of the stuff that's happened across the world. And there's a point to it that, you know, I don't think every person on this earth would agree with, you know, if they realise themselves. But like I said, where it ties to, you know, to keep people asleep, is where the conspiracy theorist ridicule comes along. So whenever they mention Illuminati or bankers and stuff, it's like, conspiracy nutters. But, you know, if you look at it and tie those things together, you start to see the obviousness. You know, Jacob Rothschild, oldest so far of owning the world, well, near enough, most of the countries, that dude. You know, last time I heard he's got about 500 trillion. They're the wealthiest family in the world. Don't know about the Morgans, I haven't heard about them much, but we've got a Rockefeller in America, and I do remember his connection with the Rothschilds as well. And you know, these things all connect, and like I said, when I see the world like that, and you know, I'm seeing how it's running, you know, it doesn't look right, does it? Like I said all those years ago, you know, before 2006-7, you know, I was seeing the world as everyone else was being shown. You know, the news. I'd never heard of, you know, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, you know, this Illuminati stuff, 9/11 inside job. All these things I've discovered. And like I said, neither will anyone else. And, you know, I'd just like to point that out. So, you know, that's all I can tell you on that one. But, like I said, I'm near enough dead. And at least, you know, about being a drama queen or whatever everyone else has called me, I'm not even asking for empathy and that, but all I want to put out there is all these messages and stuff. And, you know, like, hopefully one day there'll be people basically with the balls big enough to, you know, look into it, or, you know, stand their ground and, you know, change things around. Because like I said, a lot of people I doubt would agree, seeing the stuff that have been told as conspiracy theorists, nutter things, to find out all these things that have been said to be involved with those people, you know, connected to them. You know, 7/7, everything, 9/11. You know, a lot of people would disagree. And like I said, at the end of the day, when it comes to governments, it should be a government running a country anyway. And, you know, if money's involved, then there should be a tie with the bankers and the government itself working together. You know, not a banker basically telling the government what to do. And this is why I believe, you know, a lot of presidents, even, you know, the latest to, you know, someone like Bush, Cameron, etc., Obama, you know, basically they're in a situation where, you know, they're thrown in, like I said the last video, they're thrown into something they didn't realise was a very big mess to get into. And then, you know, they feel they're too scared to get out of it, because, you know, the people above them. But like I said, if those bankers weren't in charge, and, you know, the government's actually had more control over what they did, and, you know, based on a more honest term of work, you know, I reckon countries could run better, because like I said, you have the bankers and the government working together. You know, it'd be easier to make economy work in those terms, and it's not hard to do. And, you know, people across Britain and any other country and stuff wouldn't be pissed off about taxes and what God knows what else. And it's not harder to do, you know, it's not like fairy tale, you know, it's just logical thinking and, you know, rearranging how things have done and stuff. You know, when it comes to business, like I said before, there's a fairness to being a businessman, but when it comes to doing crimes, which are worse than any other kind of organised crime in the world, you know, it makes the mafia look like, you know, like Smurfs or something, you know, in softness compared. You know, these things involve things like false flag ops, wars and stuff. You know, to me, I disagree with that. And like I said, that's all I'll leave on there. And like I said, all it's about is economy, and economy ties to, you know, the bankers and everything that people are told. They don't realise these things. But like I said, my mind's absolutely fried. And, you know, I've been taking a lot of damage recently. So, you know, like I said, I might be standing there looking near enough healthy on the outside, but on the inside I'm absolutely ruined. But at least I'll leave that there anyway. Cheers.
Let's say the United States needs money. Instead of issuing their own United States notes backed by their own credit, they issue treasury bonds. They then sell these bonds to the Federal Reserve, which buys them with money they created out of thin air. The money that the Fed created then goes to the U.S. The U.S. then pays interest on the money that the Fed lent to the Treasury. So to clarify, the Fed creates money from nothing, loans that money to the U.S., and then charges interest on that money. What this means is that there is never and will never be enough money in circulation or in existence to pay back that debt. We as a country, as well as private citizens, are forever enslaved by debt with no way of ever paying it off. Now, when the Federal Reserve buys bonds on Wall Street, the major financial firms that have been selected as dealers deposit the proceeds at their own banks. Fed rules require banks to keep 10% of their deposits in reserves, but the bank is free to issue loans equal to the remaining 90%. Let's say the Federal Reserve buys a $1,000 bond. After putting away 10% into their reserves, they are then able to loan out 90%, or $900. Since the original $1,000 is still on deposit, the $900 in loan proceeds is more new money, money created out of nothing. A total of $1,900 of new money is now available in the economy. Now the person that took the $900 loan spends that money. The payee then deposits the $900 into their bank account, and once again, reserves and deposits increase. This process goes on until that original $1,000 bond, which was created from nothing, becomes $10,000, making this one full-fledged debt machine while also devaluing the dollar. The more money that is out in the economy, the more the value decreases. There's no wonder that since the implementation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, the dollar has lost over 95% of its value. The US dollar will eventually be destroyed due to an overwhelming financial crisis, and a globalist-run monetary authority will come along to save the day. And much like the Fed pretends that its goal is to prevent another Great Depression, the global currency will pledge to prevent another financial crisis, thus putting more power into the hands of a few and enslaving humanity that much more.
On June 30th, 2015, Greece missed a major loan repayment deadline to the International Monetary Fund. The IMF provided 32 billion euros in emergency loans to keep the Greek economy from collapsing. So why did the IMF take a risk on such an unstable economy, and what exactly is the IMF? The IMF was created alongside the World Bank in 1945 as overlapping finance arms of the United Nations. The World Bank focuses on financing and investing in developing countries, as well as eliminating poverty. The IMF primarily monitors exchange rates, stabilizes international monetary systems, and fosters global financial cooperation. Since World War II, the world's economies have become interdependent on each other through trade and investment. While this helps strengthen the global financial system, it also creates weaknesses in the economic chain. When an unforeseeable crisis like a recession or natural disaster destabilizes one nation's economy, that can severely affect dependent countries. The balancing force of the IMF prevents any potential domino effect in collapsing economies. The IMF is one of several global banks that provides loans to troubled economies to promote a stable world economy. The IMF and its sister organization, the World Bank, tend to serve more Western interests, like the US and the EU, while other global banks, like the New Development Bank and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, serve Chinese and Russian interests more. In total, the IMF has 188 member states. After the global financial crisis of 2008, African countries were hit hard. The demand for imported goods from Africa declined and international growth rates slowed. In response, the IMF proactively made billions of dollars available to places like Ghana at extremely low interest rates. With this support, Ghana's growth rate increased to over 9% in 2011 and remains one of Africa's frontier emerging markets. Currently, the IMF's biggest borrowers are Portugal, Greece, Ireland, and Ukraine. The IMF also gives precautionary loans as a sort of preventative measure before things get too bad. Receivers of precautionary loans include Mexico, Poland, Colombia, and Morocco. Despite their support, the IMF has been widely criticized for allowing disparate levels of influence. This is because member nations which invest more money in the IMF get more voting rights. The US comprises nearly a fifth of all available votes because they are the largest contributor. Additionally, since the IMF is somewhat of a last resort, countries in trouble have no choice but to agree to significant austerity measures that may not necessarily be in their best interests or agree with their ideologies. While the IMF is a powerful force within the world economic balance, it also openly serves the interests of its member countries. With so much influence in the political policies of struggling countries, it is dangerous to try and treat domestic problems with simple cash infusions and austerity measures. However, without it, countries like Greece may face worse alternatives. If Greece leaves the Eurozone over money woes, it would be devastating to all of Europe.